Chinedu Echeruo. I am the CEO and founder of the Beloved Ecosystem, and we are a startup studio that's the data science version of a startup studio. So I can understand who's in the audience. So if you're in the AI world, could you just raise your hand so I can get a sense of, okay? In the business world, tech world, okay, how about policy, academic? Okay, cool. Okay, so it's a different type of talk because it's a mixture of all the things I mentioned. So the idea is, how do we think scientifically about a social problem, but then build a business case that makes it sustainable? So that's the main kind of design challenge I had with the Beloved Ecosystem. So what I have is a presentation that attempts to share the why is it a thing, and also what we can actually do about this problem. So this is the real questions, like how do we do this properly? So this is a question I've been wrestling with for a very long time, a decade or so. And so how do we think from first principles about this question? How do we think from first principles about this question? Because if we can answer this question, if we can write equations that make this clear, then don't we have heaven on earth? Haven't we solved the greatest challenges we all have? It's like, how do we create? And so what I'm excited to share with you in this presentation is the good news, the gospel, that the math to do this is available not tomorrow, not in 1,000 years, is available today. Okay, so so how can I make such a bold claim and you guys take me seriously? How can I do that? And so 10 years ago, I wouldn't have had any basis to make such a claim, even though I suspected it existed, and therefore my pursuit for this truth was first, my belief of its existence was the condition precedent for me seeking this truth. So how do you do that? So you meditate, you imagine, you dream. So that's the first step to create. You have to imagine the possibility first. But once imagined, you have an opportunity to make significant change. So let's take the south ward of Newark, just a place, just a few 20 miles from here, where human beings earn $20,000 a year. Half of the people live in this community. And what condition under God's heaven is this possible? And how many of us even knew this was the case? So in addition to imagination, you also have to give attention. You have to give attention to the change you want to make. And this isn't a challenge that's just in Newark. This is a challenge that's all over the United States. So there are 50 million people who live in distressed communities all over the United States. And here's a map with some of the statistics. So in Mississippi, for example, 50% of the people who live in Mississippi live in a distressed community. I mean, how many of us even knew this? And why isn't it talked about by politicians, by policy people, by business people? So in this age of artificial intelligence, in this age of big data, this is data that's so clear, so available to us that we can actually use. We don't need IoT devices to get this. Okay, so where do we start in this transformation? So right now, in the most prosperous country in the world, there are 5 million young souls not connected to work, not in school. So what do we do about it? Okay, I'll get to the map. I just really want to make the case of that this is actually, this is a problem that's worth fixing, and we can fix it. Okay, so now I've tried to paint the picture. This is a problem, and given what we have in society, we can actually, given what we have in terms of advances in data science, in artificial intelligence, we can actually make a dent to this question and answer it with clarity. Okay, so now for the fun part, the part that I actually enjoy most, which is the math and the science around this. Okay, so how can I make such a claim, and why now? Okay, so who knows about Richard Feynman? Anyone? Okay, wonderful. So Richard Feynman was a professor who got a Nobel Prize in physics while he was at Princeton, or for his work at Princeton. And without getting into the technical details, but what he gifted human society or humanity was a profound insight into quantum physics, specifically the path integral formulation of quantum electrodynamics. But the upshot of all that is that it allows us finally to be able to tame complex systems. And if for those systems designers, or for those of you who are in the AI world, you know that entropy is a big monster. So what I'm saying is that the math that was given to us by Richard Feynman now gives us a way to tame complexity and therefore tame wealth creation and poverty. So what I'm saying is, as of today, October 2024, we have the math for Bayes optimal action by AI and human beings. Maximal Bayes optimal coordination is possible today. We have the math for it today. Okay, so now that we have the math for coordination, which we can then use to organize wealth, organize poverty reduction, organize abundance. What's the business model that makes it possible? So this took me a while to kind of think through, but here's a hypothesis of how the beloved ecosystem will then create wealth. So the United States, we taxpayers spend $1 trillion fighting poverty, right? So healthcare, education, there's so many. So those are your tax dollars being spent to solve this problem. To give you a sense of how much the spending is, you spend roughly $750 or $1 trillion on defense. But no, I'm sure none of you knew this number until I told you. So what you find is, until we as society, we as citizens pay attention to what's actually going on, this kind of waste and this kind of ineffectiveness will go on. So here's our opportunity to take this AI and apply it to build a new crop of startups that are taking this Bayes optimal approach towards coordination, but using it to solve this previously wicked problems of poverty. So one way you can think of poverty, as a coordination problem, right? So basically, or you can think of poverty as an inability or disbelief in your ability to move from a place of scarcity to a place of wealth, right? So if you frame it that way, then you can frame wealth creation as movement. So if you think of, so how do I move from poverty to wealth? Like, how does a kid go from not having work to having work? So it's all movement. So what I'm saying is, if you frame systems as complex systems, you can apply entropy reduction in places that previously we didn't think was possible. So there's a new type of AI that's coming. So the LLMs have done wonderful work, but there's a new type of AI it's called agentic AI. And those agents will be able to go out in the real world and accomplish things for us. So you know how people used to say, like, having an uncle who's wealthy and talking to your uncle. But imagine an all-knowing AI that you can ask it to do something for you, and it has within its perception vast amounts of knowledge and sees insights of coordination that you would never see. And it can coordinate with other agents, and it can coordinate with other humans. Imagine what you could actually do. So what I'm saying, this isn't just a dream. The math to do what I just said is available today. Okay, so the first company that will build to leverage this new AI is a company called Talented. So what we're doing is we're taking that complexity of how do you solve for childcare, transportation, mentors, training, like so much, justice involvement. How do you take all that complexity? How do you tame all this complexity? So the principles we're using are scale-free. They're based on first principles. So that means that it doesn't matter whether we're talking about organizing the world, organizing a team of 5 people, or organizing apprenticeships. This, in theory, is scale-free and is universal. So what that means that if we have a universal system for entropy reduction, or a universal system for coordination, or the universal system for organization, then it should also work for even places that traditional systems have failed, such as apprenticeships, workforce development, all the things that happen in distressed communities that cost you, taxpayers, billions, but also cost human lives incredible amounts of suffering. Okay, so we're going to start off in the New York City Metro, which has close to 2 million people in distressed communities, and then we'll move to the Northeast Metro. But the goal is essentially go national, but then eventually go global. So what I'm saying is that we have today the math for global abundance. Global abundance. I mean, 8 billion of us type abundance today. Okay, so I don't know how much time that I think I fits. Okay, so I know there was lots of poetry prior to this, right? Just words, So let me for those of you interested, I can maybe put some more physics and some more structure to some of the ideas, if you like. So is that cool? Yes. Okay. Okay. So what is this? What's this alchemy based on? Is this magic? Is this something I invented, like in my basement somewhere? So there's a gentleman. I call him my intellectual hero. His name is Carl Friston, and he's the #1 neuroscientist in the world. So he studied the brain. So if you have a principled view or explanation or a theory about the brain, you have something wonderful. Because as we know, the brain is in fact, the most intelligent system man has ever observed. So if you have a theory that can encapsulate the complexity of the brain, you have something wonderful. So what I've been working on over the past 10 years is to think about wealth creation, as I said, from first principles. And Carl Friston's free energy principle is the bridge that takes something that's incredibly theoretical and turns it into a very practical engineered system. So what I have here is just a few slides that I'm not going to go too much into the detail. We can discuss the detail offline, but just to sketch out what the intellectual structure looks like. So here are a few people that, obviously Carl Friston is the #1, but there are a few other people who've been very helpful as well. Maxwell Ramstead, his protege as well, his ideas have been very helpful in framing these ideas. And some Richard Southwell with his concepts from category theory was also very helpful. Okay, so there were cybernetists, von Neumann. I'm sure maybe of you have seen some of these characters, but they really started off really thinking about science and the connection between man and machine in a very scientific way. But what Carl Friston and the advances in statistical physics, what they've actually done is that they've taken those kind of initial kind of AI concepts, but they've extended it to biological systems as well. And Carl Friston and Maxwell Ramstead this year just released a paper called Designing Ecosystems of Intelligence from First Principles. So how do you design an ecosystem of intelligence from first principles? So for those of you who don't know, first principles essentially means like how would you think about it as like a physicist? Like how would you think of it based on laws of nature, basically immutable laws? If you can come up with a principled view for organization, then what I'm saying is this should be the physics of our abundance. So essentially what I've tried to do is to take Carl Friston's insights and engineer it and layer in another ecosystem, which is an economic ecosystem. And what we can now do is create this new type of organization that's the merging of the cyber-physical ecosystem that merges artificial intelligence with biological intelligence, so we can create the base optimal organizing system, which is what I'm calling the DICE, a decentralized intelligent collaborative ecosystem. So essentially what we can do is we can take Carl Friston's physics and biology and port it from biological systems that also have goals, that have to achieve goals, but that's also what an organization is. An organization is a group of people who have a goal and they have to achieve it. So it's the same math, same processes. So we can now frame wealth creation as how do all of us, how do all 8 billion of us organize ourselves so that we can crystallize what we see in our imagination. So that's the goal. How do we organize ourselves so that we can crystallize what we want to be, what we want to create, what we imagine. So another way of saying it, you can think of wealth creation as a phase transitions. So in physical systems, you have gas, water, ice. So those are all phase transitions. So you can think of wealth creation as you start off with your high entropy beliefs, imagination, then through action, they solidify into real, tangible wealth. So that's one way of thinking of the physics of wealth creation. So you can take that idea of entropy reduction again and apply it towards things that we typically wouldn't apply to, which is like, okay, how would you solve the entrepreneurship journey or any kind of journey, or how would you solve climate change? How would you solve all these complex problems? Okay, so again, what I'm saying is that we have the math for optimal coordination. So essentially, it would mean using information optimally to take the optimal action, which is the goal. So again, remember, your imagination is the set point for your action. So that's what you're trying to create. That's what you're trying to create with your wealth. So what I'm saying is what Carl Friston gives us is the math for optimal action. So again, this is the math for optimal action. Again, it's not an analytical solution. It's a bound to surprisal for those of you who are technical. But what it does, it gives us precise, clear, crisp way to think about optimal action. So, okay, I'll skip this part because it's just, anyway, the main goal though is this is the machine that we can now build. We can build a machine that is optimal in its ability to coordinate all of us to make human abundance possible. So I know I didn't, I think I said things, I rushed a few things, so to make up for that, what I'll do is I'll take the next few minutes to just answer questions. I'm sure there are many questions that hopefully that you have after this talk, and how about that? Okay, sounds good. Okay, thank you. Questions. I'm sure someone has. Okay, go ahead.
I have one.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, have you ever heard of a book called The Lives of a Cell?
The lives? No, I haven't ever.
Very similar. You had that one slide where you were sort of allegory between cellular structure and organization in society. Just really shout out that book as a very short read.
Okay.
As a great connection between biological systems and the math behind biological systems and how that gets represented in our society, in family structure, in government structure, and everything.
Okay, sounds interesting. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so this is, even though the translation of his very thick math into practical systems is quite challenging. So we are going to do it, but there are a few people who've already started working on it. One I can share is a company called Versus. So what they've used, Carl Friston is on their scientific board. But what they've done is that they've used his math to coordinate drones. So if you just think about it, so you have drones in the European Union. So how do autonomous drones go navigate without bumping into each other? So when you think about that, you realize that ChatGPT can do that, right? So you need sort of real-time, in-the-moment decisions and action. So that's one practical deployment of the free energy principle, or its engineered application, which is called active inference for that. Yeah. Question, yeah.
What do you see as the biggest risk for AI not becoming a tool like only for the wealthy, or like using it for the wealthy to like maximize, or those only fluent in AI and these types of tools like to use it for their own benefit, not for the benefit of
Yes, so great question. And when I hear people talk about AI alignment, I'm like, it's people are not saying it the way they should say it. And I think the way you said it is probably the way people should say it. So every system that is more intelligent than, basically there's never been a situation where an intelligent system has been subdued by a less intelligent system. Just think about it. There's never been a case. You could choose to be nice, right? But there's never been the case. So what I'm saying is, just from just pure physics, is if there emerges an intelligence that can subsume our collective intelligence, that system will bind us. That is mathematically true. So now the question is, how do we think about AI systems that stops this, or at least extends that runway as long as possible? And the way, so that architecture for that security system has to be thought through properly, and the time to do it is now. And it would have to involve ways of distributing intelligence on a human level, right? Which is different from the way we have it now, where we have pockets of capacities of who have equity structures, and which doesn't get what the question, really the heart of what you asked. So I think what my dream for the beloved ecosystem is this, right? Is this, where all 8 billion of us have access to this agentic AI, a system that can go out, that has a sum total of human intelligence at its and it can coordinate with other super intelligent systems so that our collective set point is achieved. Any other architecture that doesn't allow for that collective action has the risk of being beaten by some other system. So just from first principles, we just need to find a way to make sure that we distribute maximal intelligence to as many people as possible. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thank you, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Can you think about it in a way of like our triangle of needs, like what our primary set of needs that we have as human beings, and creating sort of a way to face those needs primarily before we get into like those like fancy startups and those want to do cool things, and but creating startups using AI that basically just goes in there. What is our first needs?
Yes.
People,
Yeah.
and go through these first from the top to the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And that's a goal. So the first one is, what you find that wealth is a state of consciousness, a state of awareness. So when people think about wealth, it's not something you give someone. You don't give people wealth, you give them money. But so wealth, so what's Maslow's, what's the most fundamental work, transformation we can have for people? It's mind. So that's what talented is. It's like, how do you upgrade mind? How do you upgrade capacities, skills, perception, right? Because that's the seed of wealth. There's no amount of wealth, money that will cure poverty. There's never, right? So poverty is a state of of mind, the state of consciousness. So the most fundamental is the one we're starting off, which is talented. But after that, okay, so now that you have awareness of yourself, your skills, opportunity, assets, resources, now you have the other things you could do. You need housing, you need transportation, there are other resources you need. But it seems to me that we can build startups that solve real problems using this agentic AI that takes on complexity that human beings just can't take on, right? And then we would remove that $1 trillion of burden from all your pockets, right? And then but also more importantly, those 50 million people who are not discussed in political theater, aren't discussed in, they almost don't exist. So what I'm saying is those 50 million people deserve just our attention. And then what I'm saying is just if we just look and say, hey, those 50 million people, what's happening to them, right? Just if we just asked our people, we would start catalyzing this type of change. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Great. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Great question. So it was actually related to what Mitch's question. So the way people are talking about AI alignment now, and people who really know that's not the way to get AI alignment. So you can't train on values, right? You can't train on virtue, right? You can't train on human goodness. So if we don't have the right objective function for the AI system, we can't get AI alignment. It's just we can't. So AI alignment has to be defined, right, for it to have an objective function. So the way I've tried to think about that is what you see here. So what I'm saying is that what is good in human society and what the AI, in my view, should optimize, it should optimize action that's in the furtherance of human stories. It sounds a little light, but it took a while to think through, but there's a physics to it. So what I'm saying is that what you want in life, what I want in life is for my story to come true. I have a vision, I have a goal, and I wanted that it turned out that thing I wanted to build is a reality. I wanted that beloved ecosystem is real, right? So that's good. So if an AI system can help me make the beloved ecosystem a reality, then that's good. If an AI system, if some other system stops me from making my story come true, then that's bad. But I think that's all. So if we can make the AI system act in a way to make our stories come true, then we have AI alignment. So I think that's, and so in that way, you're not trying to look at what's in the past, you're trying to think in the future what the people want, and therefore you can get AI alignment. So I think that's a principled view, a principled way to think about AI alignment, which is different from the way people are talking about it now. And on the second question, I think talented is the full cycle of transformation. So we include the training elements of it. So the agentic AI and Carl Friston's principles are actually the optimal way to train. They're the optimal. Basically, if you're training any other way, you're doing it less optimal than using this physics approach. So in education and training is in fact probably the number one use case for this agentic AI. Thank you. Okay, one more question.
No, something you just said, it was a beautiful line. I ended with like human stories, and thinking about human stories and what it is exactly. It might be different from one another in terms of how we see ourselves as human and how we see the world and where we want to be and how we see AI using it to like each one of us story to use AI to get to that story. Right? So it could be like so many different lines that are very dispersed into different stories ending.
Yes.
But what is like in
Yeah, so it captures everything you talked about. So we're 8 billion of us with very different goals, Yeah, so the question is, how does the AI system optimize for all those goals in a way that's globally optimal? That's the math question, right? So how do you do that? Yeah, but I'm saying to do that, you need to be clear, you have to be clear on what you're tracking. And what I'm saying, if you track data, if you track past, if you track cost functions in the past, which is what the Bellman optimization, any kind of cost function, you're going to be missing something. And what I'm saying that the way to capture humanity in AI is to capture the stories that we want to have come true. And it's very different. So those people in Newark, the reason why 50% of them earn $20,000 a year is that somewhere in the city government, in the state, or in the federal government, or us as human beings have missed something about the stories that they wanted to have come true. So what I'm saying, if we get back to empathy and just say, like, there's a human being and there's something that they want to have come true, and what do I need to do, or how can I help them make that story come true? Once we can come down to that level of one human being, then now we have a way to leverage AI in a way that we've never leveraged it before, because now we're back to really what's the most important thing, which is our own individual human stories and helping it come true. Thank you.